and to come back and perform at top level, that takes a lot.
Yeah.
It takes a lot. So, I love it. And my gosh, I get goosebumps now again, those goosebump moments thinking about that. So, hey, and for him to, come back again from another injury, which is not really career threatening, it was just a torn was it torn bicep or something,
Something
torn
like that, yeah.
pectoral muscle or something.
Yeah.
He's coming back in normal time. But, it's his ambition to be champion. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm kind of excited to see, because for sure now we're going to have it in a stadium. So, he'll have his, limited fans, of course.
At the Rumble,
But
I'm not sure if they're doing any fans, are they?
No, it's normal Thunderdome pay-per-view. They're going to be doing normal pay-per-views and shows up till WrestleMania in the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
So,
well,
lots to look forward to, guys. This is a very, very difficult Royal Rumble to predict.
I think that they spoiled it again because they could have had the option of Edge returning to the Rumble for a second time. That would have been something. What are you going to do?
I mean, hey, I'm like, why are you guys announcing this? Let it be spontaneous. I think what makes the Royal Rumble so great and must watch is who's going to be there.
Right.
What surprises, what returns, it's the spontaneous luck of the draw, that it's that allure. And God bless the late Pat Patterson for creating something as exciting as that.
Right.
But again, it's the toughest one to predict this year.
What are you thinking, though? What are you thinking as your predictions?
It's like I said, it's hard to say because looking at the variables, like I would go Cesaro, I would go Daniel Bryan for SmackDown, of course. Those two can hang with Roman Reigns.
Cesaro would be awesome. I'd love to see that.
It will be years in the making. Okay, on the Monday Night Raw side of things, it's kind of hard to say because there's not been that guy that seemed like that's a viable candidate for Drew McIntyre.
Rollins could come back and win it. I was always thinking that. We haven't seen
a two-time Rumble winner.
Yeah.
It's a possibility, but Rollins is on SmackDown, so the Rumble winner can choose whoever they want.
Who knows? I don't know. It's kind of all over the place.
It is, like Keith Lee is a good candidate, but they're not really using him as much. Who else could I see?
Riddle
Miz,
could do
of
it.
Course, is
The Miz,
Riddle could do it.
Morrison.
Miz has the money in the bank, so it's kind of... But like I said, it's very up in the air this year. There are more viable candidates to do it, but there hasn't been that person that they've been... here it is. Like, with McIntyre, they're like, here, that's going to be our next guy for the next year. None of that happened.
Well, there's always the option that Brock Lesnar is also an entrant tomorrow, which I'm hoping is not the case. I think
that gives me anxiety just thinking about it.
I hope not that he does not make a return, man. And we'll talk about why. No. So I think we'll get started then with Brock Lesnar in our conversation. So the man hails from Michigan.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Minnesota, sorry. Same place. I'm just kidding. No, middle of the middle of the country, yeah.
It's Midwest. It's Midwest, of course.
Well, so Lesnar, young guy from South Dakota, and then he goes over there grows up on a dairy farm, nonetheless.
A dairy farmer.
Yeah. And he, at 17, decided to leave the dairy farm so that he could join the Army National Guard. However,
very respectful.
Brock Lesnar is red-green colorblind, which is a disqualification factor to work in the Army, so he was then immediately discharged after failing his first computer test. So then he worked for a construction company. So during that time, Lesnar, if you guys have never seen him before, starts to build an incredible amount of muscle. An insane. This guy started lifting like crazy. He already had looked huge before playing football, but he started competing in wrestling, and then he was just eventually when he got to state college, he was just massive. He was like a freaking gorilla. He was gigantic. He was a specimen, and he was really good at wrestling, regular, amateur style, Olympic style wrestling.
I think they call him an anomaly.
Yeah.
Really, yeah.
Out of control. So when you're that big, of course you're gonna excel in anything that you want to do. So they always let you know in WWE that Lesnar was the NCAA Division I champion, because he was. That's a huge accolade.
Yep, 2000 NCAA Division I heavyweight champion. That's pretty.
In the Big Ten conference, that's a big competitive conference.
That's a big deal. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for sure.
That's a lot of big, corn-fed, working out on the field, middle of the country boys out there shoveling snow out, used to the cold. That's some big boys.
That's a lot of meat. It's a lot of meat in the bowl over there, man.
A lot of red meat,
sure.
Working hard till the sun go down, and then in the wintertime they're out there yelling football, but out there shoveling snow in negative 40-degree weather. The middle of the country is a different place. I don't know.
It is. The Midwest is a different breed of people from the Midwest. I always say it's a different breed of American, to be honest. So, and I mean that in the best way.
Well, after 4 years of college and all you did pretty much there is you just wrestle and get really good at that. Really, at that time, what other avenue are you going to do? And in 2000, we saw that was really at the boom, another boom of the wrestling, periods, because you had WCW coming to their close. WCW 2000, things changed really, for the worse back then. That's when, if you guys look at the histories, when things started really to go downhill.
I would say a lot sooner than that. I think a lot. I mean, you would see the major decline. Of course, the major financial decline would show its face in 2000, but I think 99 was.
Oh, 99 was definitely the on TV worst. Yeah.
Yeah, it was tanking pretty bad.
And unfortunately, I guess you wouldn't have to say unfortunately, but Vince McMahon over on the other hand on Monday Night Raw, they were killing it. They were pulling in all the audience of people turning off the TV from TNT and switching over to Raw. That started to happen. You started to see the pull. So Brock Lesnar, he did probably what was the smartest thing that he could do at the time. Because what are you going to do when you're that gigantic and you look like that? And you've got this wrestling background. So Vince McMahon essentially built him this amazing platform to succeed, if you think about it.
Yeah, and thank heavens the football career didn't work, because that's where he wanted to really go.
Right.
Was the NFL was and a lot of guys, who are athletes like that, football or whatever they're pursuing, because you can't really make money in amateur wrestling.
No.
It's always been a high school collegiate sport, or unless you're wanting to be a full-time Olympian.
One of those things kind of to get you there. You get a wrestling scholarship, you get a degree, you move on.
Of course, yeah. You're just there to get your education.
Some guys, open a wrestling dojo, or maybe they might, become a coach or something. Or like you said, guys go on to the Olympics, like Kurt Angle.
Yep, which we can do a show on him too. But
I think we will. The captain now requested that one. I need to study for that one. That's why we didn't do it right away. But
Kurt Angle, man, that's a lot of meat and a lot of ground to cover.
Especially his executive career, nonetheless.
Yeah, and now he is a podcaster now too. So
yeah,
it's a lot of interesting stuff. Actually, we can share about that one. I took a listen; it's pretty good.
Lesnar in 2000, just like we mentioned with Orton and Cena, he goes over to OVW. That's where he debuts in their developmental territory, Ohio Valley Wrestling, and that's also where he met Paul Heyman as well.
Yep.
And they were part of Shelton Benjamin was there at the time, and Shelton Benjamin was on top. He was killing it. He was white hot for OVW, and they I believe, got into a tag team together, and they called themselves like Minnesota Crew or Minnesota Wrecking Crew or something like that, and they won the
Yeah.
OVW championships.
Yep, the tag titles. Yep. Uh, two University of Minnesota boys doing the work over there. I think they were together basically at the same time.
Yeah,
Uh,
they were
yeah.
pulling the money. They were pulling the crowds. Definitely, and look at the spectacle that they could sell. You got Lesnar, who's they could sell as, like I said, looks like, I have no other explanation to what he looks like other than just a gorilla.
Oh yeah.
And you got
It's
Shelton, who's equally as big, but also incredibly agile, fast, and doing things in the ring. You know, jumping up and grabbing you by the head and pulling you straight down and doing flips and all kinds of stuff.
absolutely. I mean, Shelton Benjamin was one of the best high flyers they had
Yeah,
over there. So, I mean, he was a different type of beast, you know. And now you don't see it as much because, he's gotten much older. And you don't see him flip around too much. But you see a little glimpse here and there, and, of how he used to be. So,
especially
yeah,
during the
pretty good
EC
stuff.
the restart of ECW. Shelton Benjamin was jumping around a lot back then.
The gold standard,
Shelton
Benjamin.
Benjamin.
Love that. I love that iteration of him. They could have went many more miles with that character, but
Well, he's always been the gold standard to me.
sure, I believe so too. One of the best athletes for sure.
One of the best. Well, I mean, they see the WWF back then and all the guys. We were talking like, Jim Cornette and JR and Vince. They all realized what they had in Brock Lesnar. That they had money. They had gold. They had professional wrestling, essentially in a person. Someone that can draw a crowd, who's big, strong, can do heard of things that a normal man can't do. You can sell that instantly. He could be known as, the next big thing, both literally and figuratively.
Absolutely. Jim Ross always talks about Brock, with very, very high regard.
Yeah.
Because, when you looked at him and when they saw him perform, they're like, my God, here it is. This is our dude.
Yeah.
Here we go. Let's push him. Let's get him up. Let's move him up. And that's what happened the night after WrestleMania 18. The wrestling world changed because Brock Lesnar arrived.
March 18th.
March 18th, night after WrestleMania. I think it was Montreal. Yep, it was in Montreal. And, Brock came in. I forgot who he F5'd, but he was tearing up some people. And you got this guy, and you got Paul Heyman right behind you. Oh, boy.
Yeah, Paul Heyman was with him. Yep.
Right, and you can smell it. And even in the first initial draft, which happened a week later, they were literally fighting for his services already. Guy hadn't even had one match in, but they were like, oh, nope. Brock Lesnar's, Vince was like, Brock Lesnar's coming to SmackDown. Nope. And Ric Flair was like, nope. Brock Lesnar's coming to Raw. They
already wanted him.
When you're fighting over someone's services, and they hadn't even had one match or hadn't really been on national TV all but 15 minutes.
He was already a star before he had the chance to be a star, if you think about it.
It's
before he walked in the door.
It's like you had it. I always say you had the Oscar as soon as you showed up, you had it. And I think they knew that. So I mean, look at this statistic. I mean, in his first year, a couple months later, he wins the King of the Ring.
Yep, King of the Ring. Because he at that time he was feuding with Jeff and Matt, and
right.
Who were on top because they had just come off of their big feuds with Edge and Christian. Everyone knew who the Hardy Boys was. They were on fire, and then the only good way to put out this fire is to introduce this terrifying heel who can tear through both of them at the same time. So then people started to notice, like, oh shit. Yeah. So like you said, he goes into the King of the Ring and he's dominating in there. He's continuing to do that over the top spectacle that he was, and he
just
defeats
by the looks.
huge
Yeah.
names: RVD, Booker T, Bubba Ray. He beat
Yep.
everybody for the King of the Ring.
And that's a very, very talented pool in itself. Very talented pool in itself. And to come out and say, "Hey, I'm the young guy. I'm about to take your food." And these aren't just, you know, these are decade long veterans.
Yeah.
Even at that time, you're looking at Booker T, who's probably had already a decade and a half in the business already at that point. Same with Bubba Ray. You know, to say that I beat them and I got that high honor to be the King of the Ring. Come on. 2002, and you're not even on TV 2 months.
As a fan, you're starting to go, "Holy shit, who is this guy?"
Oh yeah.
They're starting to pay attention now, so the smartest thing to do now is to send them right to the championship. That's what it's all about. Wrestling's all about that. You give the hot guy the championship.
I mean, he even defeated Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
I mean, come on now. To be a King of the Ring and then beat Hulk Hogan. And at that time, he didn't even have 3 or 4 months in the business as it was.
Yep.
That's a very good resume. So you move on to the Nassau Coliseum, you go to SummerSlam 2002, and you're put against probably the hottest star in the industry, in The Rock, where the fans, at that time, Rock was going Hollywood.
Yep.
Rock
Everyone
was
knew
himself out. Everybody knew. Crowd was kind of against him, if you remember that match.
Mm-hmm.
But when Brock came out, that pop. You know what I mean? So he was
the redemption arc for that story, because like you said, the fans both in real life and in story were against The Rock for the first time in a while, but he's still obviously the most popular superstar on the planet.
Yeah, of course, but wrestling fans are very unique.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they don't want to see that. They know that Rock's not going to be around, and we don't. You're yesterday's news to us.
Yeah, you don't matter as much.
You don't exactly. You don't. So, Brock ends up defeating Rock in a pretty good match.
Brock and Rock.
And becomes Brock and Rock.
Yeah.
And I think it was 123 days into being a superstar in his rookie year.
One of the fastest people to do that.
Yeah. Ric Flair was actually first, but Ric Flair's different.
Yeah.
I think Ric Flair beat him by 10 days. But if you're looking at it as far as youth goes, because he was only about 23, 24 years old at the time.
Yeah.
And to say that, okay, in the first 123 days of my career, I did this. I won the King of the Ring, I beat Hulk Hogan, and I beat The Rock. And I'm now WWE champion.
Undisputed champion, nonetheless.
Excuse me, undisputed champion. And to do that puts you in a legendary status. What Brock Lesnar did in that 123 days takes some stars at least 5 to 10 years to do.
And they were doing the Undisputed Championship was being defended back then as the one championship against
between
both brands. Yeah.
Yeah. Up until I think about a month or two later, where Stephanie McMahon was like, well, yeah, Brock's coming with us, because he was still exclusive to SmackDown. He was SmackDown.
Yep.
And they said, well, the WWE Championship's with us permanently. Eric Bischoff, you don't have a championship. I remember that segment, and I actually rewatched that segment. They went back in the limousine, and that was the first time Raw did not have a heavyweight championship.
Yep.
So
they took the title.
That on.
They took the title and they went with it. They got in the limousine and they went with it.
And went away. And not only that, he had a pretty good, and that was probably the best summer he's had. And then now you're stepping up against a guy like The Undertaker.
The best thing to happen out of that, though, was that Eric B reestablished the World Heavyweight Championship. Thank God. The
Yeah,
Big
Big
Gold.
Gold. I
Big
call it
Gold came
Big
back.
Goldie.
Which
Yeah.
has always been my favorite title, by the way, guys. I've always wanted a replica World Heavyweight Championship. I've loved that championship. To me, that's like the symbol of professional wrestling. I think some of the first people I
Oh
have
yes.
remember holding that was like Batista, and, seeing early memories of those things.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you look at that title, you look at tradition. You look at Dusty Rhodes. You look at Ric Flair. You look at some of the very best who've stepped in the ring. That title has much more lineage. Going back many decades. So
And
I
Randy
really
Orton
love
being
that
the
title
last one.
myself. Eh, yeah. Well, actually, John Cena was the last one. Randy Orton had the WWE. Well, no, you're right. You're
Yeah.
right. Randy Orton was the last one. No. Daniel Bryan is the last one. Wait a minute. Nope.
It's
Brock
Orton.
Lesnar. Well, to be the official world champion
So
before the unification.
the last World Heavyweight Champion would have been Orton, I believe.
Are we talking about before they unified, right?
Even with so I think
Because
it
before they
was
unified, because Randy Orton was WWE champion at that time, and then John Cena was the World Heavyweight Champion. So John Cena was the last one to actually hold it as the titles were split.
so when the
And the
World Heavyweight
last,
so then when they unified it with victory over Cena, Orton became the final heavyweight champion. So just like the same thing back then, the big gold belt was used this time in tandem with the WWE Championship. So that was the signify that Randy is the youngest, the 4-time, the final champ, the last one to officially touch Big Goldie before it was put in the vault. It was Orton.
oh, you mean,
Because at that time they
well,
absolved the championship to become the WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
well, if you think about it technically, really, technically, to someone who physically held it, because remember, uh, they had the two belts for the longest, and then Brock, when he beat Cena in 2014, is technically the last one to actually hold it with the WWE Championship. I mean, you
Yeah.
can go back. I mean,
What they're
that's how
saying
I
is in
remember
the
it.
in the record books is that Orton is the final world heavyweight champion.
Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of going to debate you on that one.
No, he is the final world champion. You can look it up at
How
break, and
so?
we'll come back and talk about it. Yeah, he's the final world heavyweight champion, the last one.
How is that though?
Officially the last world heavyweight champion.
But how is that?
Because when it was when he beat Cena, he held that championship, and the big gold was used in tandem with the WWE title. And then when Brock became the champion in 2014 was when the World Heavyweight Championship was officially put into the vault, and they gave Brock a brand new WWE World Heavyweight Championship.
We'll have to talk about that. But let's keep going. We'll have to talk about that. We'll have to talk about that. But anyway, we go into the fall of 2002. So Brock is still WWE champion, rampaging through everybody.
Including
I
the
believe
Undertaker.
Undertaker, which kind of was I believe, the
That was
rivalry
the
that kind of sealed the deal on Brock Lesnar.
that was the double disqualification for the championship. You remember that? And which means Lesnar
Oh yeah,
retains. And then they had a Hell in a Cell
yeah,
match.
yeah. They did have a Hell in a Cell encounter. Probably one of the more brutal Hell in a Cell matches. Very physical. You never really seen Undertaker busted up quite like that before. And yeah, I mean that victory in itself, to be Undertaker inside Hell in a Cell, is absolutely.
And Taker was wrestling with a hurt hand too.
Yeah, broken hand. Well, broken hand,
Yeah.
broken arm, whatever that was. Because I remember, they didn't want him to use the cast,
Yep.
but inside Hell in a Cell, I remember that episode. Stephanie McMahon said, "You can use that. You can use that as a weapon." But that was pretty cool. That was a good match. Thinking about it,
It
I'm gonna have to
was.
rewatch that one again.
Well, at that point, you get at Lesnar. He's on top. He's champion. He's
Yep.
already gotten it now officially the only champion of SmackDown. He's beaten Taker. He beats him in a Hell in a Cell match. You know, he's
Mm-hmm.
already. What else are you gonna do with him? He's already done everything at that point. So the next thing they do is they put him in a handicap match. So they're like, all right, so now he's gonna try. Two men are gonna try and take him down,
Mm-hmm.
and he beat Edge at Rebellion, and
Yep.
he retained the title. So now I think creative was like, all right, what the hell do we do now? We need something to match Brock. We need somebody to take down Brock. We need someone to be able to defeat Brock, and
Mm-hmm.
that would be Mr. Paul White, Big Show. They play him. They finally Big Show defeats Lesnar at Survivor Series and becomes world champion.
Well,
And
with an
that's Lesnar's
asterisk.
first pinfall
Yeah,
ever.
Lesnar's very first. Yeah, ever.
Think about
Um,
that, guys. He goes all that time without ever shoulders touching the mat for
nope.
three.
It was. Yeah. I mean, even though it was done dirty,
Yeah.
and it was a cross with Paul Heyman. I mean, it gave him a face turn because it made him the baby face. He didn't play it as a heel,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So, I mean, for that kind of thing to be his, um, what am I trying to say here? For that turn, it was kind of good though for him because it made Brock more. It didn't make him much more of a threat, but it made him more of a crowd favorite. He's not really a heel because more people were cheering for him than booing for him. So, but that was kind of weak though because the Big Show rivalry didn't really go too far.
No, not
Because
really.
what it really does is it sets up Armageddon 2002, where Big Show and Kurt Angle go in one another. Um, but Brock Lesnar comes in and interferes to try to get like some sort of revenge, and then Kurt Angle wins. Um, Kurt Angle wins the title,
Yeah.
which sets us up
Well,
for
at
a
that point,
redemption
if
story.
you think about it, they paint Brock Lesnar now as the ultimate. That's the ultimate story right there. That's the ultimate,
Right.
big guy showcased as the most dominant force for that long, all the way until that long to lose, and then, like you said, it's the end all be all of professional wrestling at the time was Brock Lesnar. So I think at that time they're like, we just need to move on a little bit, but also still keep Lesnar in the background as still potential as to go, big again.
I can see that. I can, from that perspective, I can see that. But really, Brock never lost his place in line.
No.
You know, um, they could have. I believe Vince could have kept it on him for a long time. But I think the crowning achievement was getting to WrestleMania.
With the Royal
I think
Rumble.
that's what right, with the Royal Rumble victory. I think that's where they wanted. They wanted, for some reason, you're not really a big star until you're coordinated at WrestleMania.
And that's kind of the
So,
icing on the cake right there to go all the way, because then, like we said earlier, what else are you going to do? What else are you going to give him? You're going to make him a tag champion? You're going to give him one of the lower belts? No, you're not going to do any of that stuff. You
no.
got to do
And
something else.
Brock was never mid card.
No, never mid card. You
Brock,
can't even. So at that point, you can't send him down because then you ruin Brock Lesnar.
yeah, Brock would never be a United States champion. Brock would
No.
never be an Intercontinental champion. He'll never be a tag champion. Let's be real here. Brock has always been main event material, no matter how you looked at him. No matter how you look at him today, now thinking about it and doing this research, Brock was always main event level
Yeah,
to anybody.
shot right to the
He would
sky
never
from
stoop.
rocketed right there.
Exactly. He didn't have to do what guys like Bret Hart had to do,
No,
or Shawn Michaels, and become
or most of the
Intercontinental
current
champion
talent right now
first.
is having to do.
Right, you have to. Well, it's a time honored tradition, right? You win for some. you win the mid card title,
Yeah.
and you're the champion. The only person that didn't do that, thinking of it now, is Jinder Mahal.
Mm-hmm.
Jinder Mahal is actually one up with Lesnar because he didn't he didn't have any title really. I think he was a tag champ at one point, but never went to a mid card title. He went right to the WWE Championship
Yeah.
after he came back. So, I mean,
I
Jinder
always
Mahal,
enjoyed Jinder as the champion. I thought that was a good time.
you know what? And I'm glad you brought that up because I wanted to make that an episode. Uh, Jinder's WWE Championship reign is just a masterful piece in heel work. But anyway,
But there's so much, backstage and behind
yeah,
the scenes stuff of why Jinder
yeah,
was champion. It's crazy. And to why he
yeah.
retained his championship at so many times.
A lot of people don't understand, but we'll
I
have
want
to
to see
get into
Jinder
that
again.
one. He was on that Superstar Spectacle thing.
Was he? I didn't get a chance to see that.
Yeah, he looks good, man. He
What was
is.
the Superstar Spectacle thing, anyways?
It was to promote their relationship with India. It was like Indian
Oh.
Republic Day.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a pretty solid show. You see all the top stars from India. I don't know if you remember Indoshare.
Mm-hmm.
Their NXT. You're at NXT a lot. Indoshare. Malcolm Bivens used to manage them,
Yep.
but they were there. But Jinder tagged again with the Singh brothers. Are now called the Bollywood Boys again. So I mean, listen. He looks good. And you know what? To be honest, if they put him in the Royal Rumble, I would pick Jinder because Drew and Jinder have a lot of history.
I think
And I
Jinder
think
could
he'll
do
be
it
great.
tomorrow. If he's there, I have a feeling he'll do it.
Hey, that's a great
Yeah,
thing. I
that's
love
a good.
Jinder, but a
I
lot
love
of
him
people
too.
wouldn't do that. But anyway, we're on Brock Lesnar, not Jinder
Yeah,
Mahal.
so he
Sorry.
Lesnar wins the Royal Rumble, which is now one of the bigger crowning achievements because you think there's nothing else for him to do besides win the Royal Rumble. So that gives him WrestleMania. What is that? 12, 11, 12?
No, WrestleMania 19.
19. Sorry, I'm looking at the
Yeah,
Greek letters wrong. My fault. Um,
but yeah,
he that's who would that was who set I forgot who set up that WrestleMania match. What was it for Brock Lesnar? What was the crowning match?
it was Kurt versus Brock Lesnar.
Is this the one where
And
where he won with a broken freaking neck?
yeah,
Is this where
yeah, he
yes.
went into the main event. Yeah, he went into the main event with a broken neck. That was you didn't really see Kurt much. Interesting. Yeah,
Well,
Kurt's neck was
so
broken.
it's so interesting about that's right, WrestleMania 19 because if both of these guys, Kurt Angle and Lesnar, were wrestling with hurt necks at the same time. How dangerous is that? But that's in my opinion, that's the ultimate. The show must go on. Can you imagine what was going through the backstage minds of everybody at your biggest show with your biggest two guys, and you got them both hurt at the same time?
Oh, it's a clutching my pearls type moment.
I would have shit my bricks all day. I would have been like, what? That's like having Muhammad Ali versus Sugar Ray, and Sugar Ray's got a broken ankle and Muhammad's got fucked up teeth and can't take a punch.
Right, or messed up wrists or something like that. To that effect.
That's what
But
the
yeah,
caliber
both were
was,
very hurt.
because at the end of the day, yes, it is sports entertainment, and yeah, of course they could have done something else for safety or whatever else that night, but these guys are, professional athletes, and they went out there and they still did it. The show still went on. And that's like Kurt Angle.
Well,
That's where that stemmed from, with the broken freaking neck, because he had a broken motherfucking neck. If you think
oh man,
about it.
it was very bad. One bad move could have paralyzed him.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Ultimate
One
respect
bad
for these guys that night to go out there and do that.
Absolutely.
Because
And being injured, and these are not just normal injuries. These are like career-ending injuries that, if anything
Brock,
were to go astray,
he got hurt by
not
doing
Brock.
some. Well, Brock did he got hurt that night because of the freaking or not the was it the moonsault he messed up or something, the shooting star press or something. he
Yeah,
messed that up. And
that was kind of
why
interesting.
why do that? Lesnar hadn't done that in years. Why do that that night of all time? You know?
Well, it's WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's WrestleMania.
It's your first WrestleMania. And not only is it your first WrestleMania, it's your first WrestleMania main event.
Yeah.
And not only is it your first WrestleMania main event, it is your first WrestleMania main event for a championship. So
That you undisputedly earned. So yes, you are right. You do have to go out there and give your A game.
you know, something very interesting out of the Kurt Angle podcast, now that we're talking about WrestleMania 19, Kurt was going to sit that WrestleMania out to kind of mend his injuries.
Yeah,
And
because
you
he had a
know who
broken
would have
fucking
been
neck.
in there? You know who would have been in there?
Who?
Chris Benoit.
Wow.
So we could have, if Kurt Angle were to sit out of WrestleMania 19, we would have had Chris Benoit versus Brock Lesnar for the title.
And it wasn't until
But
shortly after Benoit did what Benoit did.
Benoit did what Benoit.
Which, by the
eventually
way,
went to the main event.
now that we said his name, to get the elephant out of the room, I will not do a podcast on Chris Benoit. I am not opening that door.
Oh, come on.
I do not.
You know
Well, I don't. Think about the door that we open when we talk about what happened.
Think about. I mean, it's inevitable. It's inevitable because you're opening a really forbidden door.
Yeah.
This guy, you can't, and I can understand where you're coming from. You can't glorify someone who did what he did.
I don't even want to say honestly what he did. You know.
No. You don't have
You know,
to. You
it's
don't have to.
and if you guys don't know what happened, if you were not even some of you guys that listened to this weren't even of age or not even thought of being born at the time when this happened.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, so if you guys go back and look at the history of what happened, but I mean, we can talk about Chris Benoit and talk about how it does because it did affect a lot of things, but I just don't particularly think that we should do a Chris Benoit episode is what I'm saying.
We don't have to. We don't have to. You guys can easily look it up. There's episodes of Dark Side of the Ring on
Definitely,
YouTube.
yeah, the
Look
Dark
up
Side of the Ring.
Dark Side of the Ring. Chris Benoit. You'll get all the information you need about what happened and why his name is kind of a no-no in the wrestling world. And I don't know why they're trying to bring him. They're trying to make it. I don't know. But anyway, you get to WrestleMania 19, huh?
We can mention it and we'll talk Chris Benoit and I'm not saying that he's a forbidden topic or what happened, but I just do not want to do that as a one singular thing. So just because we always have that thing for say, because even just putting Chris Benoit as a podcast, I don't, unfortunately that would be the main subject of the whole thing.
Yeah, it was very bad what he did.
So that one is the I know our robot on Twitch always asks you guys who or what would you guys like to talk about. So we'll talk about that, but we're not going to do a feature.
No. We'll talk briefly, but we'll never open that door because there's a certain section of his life that will just dominate. It eclipses his career. Let's just say that it really does. But eventually Lesnar wins the championship in probably a great match.
Well, and also, Angle and Lesnar were working so well together at the time. They were like essentially.
They had chemistry.
Yeah, they had chemistry. It was hard not to see that on TV either. It was hard to believe that these guys were enemies. And then they were such good friends, backstage. And I think that both of them had the utmost respect for each other after they walked out of WrestleMania together. Like, hey, man, you broke my neck? Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I got a broken neck, do you?
Yeah. Well, they get to go to it was in the British Columbia, and they had a steel cage match, him and Angle, and Vince McMahon was the referee.
Yeah.
And I think something happened in that Lesnar also got hurt during this, right? Like not necessarily hurt, but he like had a faint. He like blacked out. during.
I believe I can't really remember what happened fully. And I remember that cage match, but I
Yeah,
just can't remember what happened fully
he like
in there. It's been
something
so many
happened. I know he
years.
didn't hit. No, he didn't hit him with his head or not, because I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, did he hit his head again? Is it something?"
I
I
feel like he's
think he
concussed.
was, I think, still concussed from then, and I think it was just residual
Mm-hmm.
effects. But if you noticeably noticed that Lesnar was not 100% Lesnar. He's
Yeah.
not the Lesnar that we knew, but he like had some kind of fainting spell in the match. So he's still, once again, the show must go on again. This time inside a motherfucking steel cage.
And you're bringing when you are in a cage or you're in those kind of specialty matches, the danger level is just
Hmm.
a lot more higher, and it's a lot more, you're more of a liability. But remember, in those days, even in the early days of the ruthless aggression era, you still had to go out there and wrestle your matches
Yeah.
no matter what. It's not like now where you can actually sit out and
Oh,
you
hold
know
on one second. Some some background noise. One second there, guys.
oops,
Jeremy.
sorry.
1 second.
What is going on? Oh,
Sorry about
okay.
that, guys. My dog rolled over on the remote and turned on a trailer for the Karate Kid.
Wax on, wax off, Miyagi-san.
That's exactly
Oh,
what was playing. That part of the trailer was playing when he rolled over onto the remote at Amazon. So yeah, we record these things live, guys. This is all, you can't make that stuff up. So yeah,
no.
we get back to it. Inside the steel cage, Lesnar. Thank God these guys, they both make it out okay. Um,
Mhm.
and you just see the utmost respect of sportsmanship between these two. Still,
Of course.
still. And it all comes down to the Iron Man match. And God damn it, was this probably, in my opinion, one of the best Iron Man matches we have ever seen in the history
Very,
of wrestling. I still think
very,
from that
yeah.
time and any time afterwards, for me, I've never seen a better Iron Man match than at that time. No one's
Especially
done
with
it
it
better.
being, oh yeah. I mean, especially with it being 60 minutes and on national TV, it gets kind of hard to watch Iron Man matches because they run so long.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't really do 60 minutes anymore. But that one had you on the edge of your seat. Each pinfall was a story,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see within each pinfall there was a level of desperation
People were
at
leaning
each
forward in their
point,
seats. They were notating how what the score was. They were looking at it like it was like the NBA finals.
or the World
Right.
Series, and you're at the bottom of the ninth, and anything can happen at this point. But you're right, one of the best Iron Man matches, and you can
Just
watch it
back
on the
and
network
forth,
commercial free.
physical and
And
back and forth. And like we said, these guys had worked with each other for so long now. They had great respect, good sportsmanship, good chemistry, and they went out there and just tore the house down. And for a whole hour, they wrestled for an hour.
one whole there was no break. That's 1 hour Iron Man match. I forgot what the final score was. I think it was like 5-4 or something like that,
Yeah, I think you're right. 5-4, was it? Yep.
but
Four to.
it was in the last minute that I think Brock got the victory. I think it was in that last
Yeah.
minute. But that's what makes Iron Man matches so special. If you can utilize the point system and the desperation to get those extra points and the time, man, you got it. You got yourself a classic, and that was a classic. I remember watching it on TV as a kid.
And that's the biggest
And
thing these guys have to remember is time, because you gotta, if you mess up any of that choreograph, you're really messing with time. You're messing with
right,
the potential of the story ending, because what do? If you accidentally mess it up and then the time goes out, you gotta, see, they had to
I
stick
just
to the
love it.
very best.
Oh yeah, and I just love it. Personally for me, for Iron Man matches, when they're in like the last like 5 minutes, or even the last 3 minutes and the score
Mm-hmm.
is tied, and it's like, oh, it can go ever which way.
Yeah.
That's what gets me, and that is what Sasha. I think that's what Sasha and Bailey did when they had their 30 minutes.
Yeah.
In at NXT Takeover Respect, I know for sure they took that little page out of the Angle Lesnar Iron Man match to kind of keep it, on its toes. So I like
Yeah.
it. You don't
Well,
really see that much anymore.
now Lesnar is 3-time champion. That's a crazy accomplishment in his short amount of time. He has the championship 3 times,
Hello.
and
and
then
three
he
times in 1 year.
yeah. At this point, he is gold. He is money. He is professional wrestling gold.
Oh, at that time, yeah. I mean, he is their star. He was the star of SmackDown.
Yeah,
The
he
leader.
was SmackDown.
Yeah, he was. For that time period, you bet your butt he was. He was on every week.
And he
Then now you're getting.
yeah,
Then
every
you go,
week he was workhorsing it back then.
Sure. But now, after that moment, you're kind of seeing the career of Brock Lesnar kind of dwindling
Start to unfold
little
a
by
little bit.
little.
They paired him with some weird stuff between there, and yeah, he did see Benoit one more time. Him and Taker had the biker chain match.
Not as good as the Hell in a Cell.
No, that was
It kind of ignited the rivalry again, but again, Taker did not win. Still,
people weren't really into what was going on again. They weren't biting
No.
it. They weren't biting at the bait that they were doing. But what they did was to fix that was they insert Lesnar into the Survivor Series match, and you've got Lesnar's team versus Angle's team. People are finally back into this again. Lesnar, Lesnar and Angle going back and forth now again, and they at the November 16th Survivor Series, and Lesnar eliminated after it was, of all people, Benoit forced him to tap out, and Lesnar would go on to lose the match. But they set up during the Survivor Series match. Now they set up Lesnar versus Benoit later, and if you guys remember, Benoit passed out during the championship, which they called this is where Lesnar debuted the Brock Lock.
I remember
he passed out to the Brock Lock.
I cannot believe I did not include that in my notes, because I remember watching that match as well as a kid, the Brock Lock. How can you forget? But it was so short, folks.
Yeah, it didn't last very long. No.
It was no more than like a 2-day thing. But you're right.
The Brock Lock.
But then you still see the decline of Brock Lesnar. You know.
We can then talk about. We're probably going to take a break now, and then we can come back to his little feud the first time that he met Goldberg, and then we can talk about Hardcore Holly. I mean, if you want to point out Hardcore Holly, this is also something that happened with Holly. They also said that there was a match between Holly. This is kind of in the rumor sphere. There's a match that happened between Holly and Lesnar where Lesnar, it was said to have legitimately hurt Hardcore Holly, that he didn't break the hold on purpose, and that Holly had actually legitimately received an injury because they had some beef. Now, like you said, you have to take some of this stuff with a grain of salt, but back then, beef was sometimes serious, so it's not hard to imagine, Lesnar's temper. Lesnar is a real life fighter as well, and it is potential that he might have hurt that boy. He might have hurt Hardcore Holly.
Probably. You don't know the secrets of pro wrestling.
No.
You talk about one thing and you screw with them, they could totally change the trajectory of the match. And
all it takes is backstage, and 5 minutes before the match, you have that power to kind of just change things. And so if Lesnar was really that malicious and did that, that's really fucked up. But at the same time, it's a sport that you're in,
whose word is Vince McMahon going to take?
Right.
Bob Holly's or Brock
Or
Lesnar's?
Lesnar, who is,
He's going to
yeah,
take he's going to take Lesnar's.
every time. Every time. Every
The
time.
the sky is the sky is purple, Vince. Okay, I believe Lesnar over the scientists. They say the sky is blue. Lesnar says the sky is purple. I believe Lesnar. Whose word are you
Well,
going to take? Your
so,
biggest draw or just some guy?
or some guy, right. So, eventually what I'm getting at with this is that Lesnar he interrupts on Raw and he met Goldberg for the first time, and Lesnar gave that interview that he said, I could beat anybody in the whole world. I'm Lesnar. I could beat anybody in the whole world. And Goldberg
Yeah.
interrupts the end of the interview, and they do an iconic stare down. Um, and but then when Vince finds out about what happened between him and Holly, they Vince, he loves to take that backstage heat and try to put it into creative as best as he can. And he inserted Hardcore Holly into this, and he wrote the storyline, and then told everyone that Lesnar had legitimately beef with Hardcore Holly, and that Bob Holly hated Lesnar, and so now you bring the backstage shit onto TV. And it's interesting because that I think it was almost a year long that had settled between Lesnar and Holly, and then Vince was like, "Yep, let's bring it onto TV." All the way for a whole
He
year to 2004, where they had a championship match. So that was cool for Holly to go against for the WWE title, but Lesnar defeated him and all that stuff.
Yeah, Bob Holly was never a guy to be the WWE champion
No,
anyway.
unfortunately
So
not. No.
you and like you said, you got to take it with a grain of salt. That rivalry was just a filler.
Yeah.
I mean, now you're getting to the more meat and potatoes. Now you're seeing the Goldberg. Uh, you're hearing rumors and rumblings that Goldberg is not extending his contract. He's
Mm-hmm.
leaving the WWE. Now you're hearing rumblings that Brock Lesnar is trying to pursue other things. Brock Lesnar is being burnt out. And you're hearing that throughout the first quarter of 2004. But, Eddie Guerrero now is stepping up,
Yeah.
and Eddie in San Francisco wins the WWE Championship.
I loved
Remember
everything
No Way
between
Out.
Eddie and Brock. That was
Oh, I
so
love
good. Some of
and
the
that
best of
story
Eddie.
again.
Some of the best of
I
Eddie. Well, that if you think about it, that was really the last
Yeah,
time that you see Eddie in that light before Eddie passed. And now we bring up Eddie. I will always do a thing on Eddie. Yes, his death was
oh
untimely
God,
because it had to do with drugs and everything, but that wasn't essentially what caused. He didn't die of an overdose. Yes, he didn't die of a heart issues related to problem, but you know who are we to judge someone for that?
well, Eddie's story is a redemptive story. It's
Right.
it's a it's someone who hit rock bottom but came back.
Multiple times up
One of
and
the
down the
Oh
ladder.
yeah,
Yeah.
and to see him at that pinnacle, hugging his mom, going into the crowd, holding up the Mexican flag, as well as WWE Championship. It's one of those moments, man, that you just never forget. You
He
forget
was
where you
very
were.
infectious. His smiles were very infectious during that time because
I loved me some Eddie.
he was legitimately
You
happy.
know
You could see he was having a good time out there. He was finally Eddie Guerrero that you wanted him to be.
exactly. And
And who else but
you
to
know,
put him up against with than Brock Lesnar? You know.
and the guy who who carried the WWE, who carried um SmackDown, you know, passes the torch on
Mm-hmm.
because he knows he's going. But then you build up and you get to that point. You get to Madison Square Garden. You get to WrestleMania 20. The crowd's not into it because they know what's going on. You have two guys who are leaving, so why the crap do they give a crap about
Yeah.
the match in the first place?
That's
It
what
was
they say.
very
The WrestleMania XX, the lackluster XX, it was not like you said. The people were just not into it.
nope, and it was. It's kind of a dilemma though when you have two people who are exiting the company. And it's like, why should we care? You guys aren't going to be here tomorrow.
The only
You
good
know,
thing
you
that
guys are out the door.
the only thing they could do was insert Stone Cold to try and help this out a little bit. And I remember that's
To kind of ease
yeah,
it.
to try to ease
Yeah.
the pain a little bit. Stone Cold with the what do you call it? The four wheeler, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
What do they call those again?
ATVs.
Quads,
Yeah.
ATV quads, yeah. Uh, but I mean, even inserting Stone Cold doesn't really help.
No,
You
it
know, on
was it was
paper it
kind of
looks
just too late
great.
at that point. On paper, yeah, it sounds
Right.
great. Lesnar Goldberg, right? Who wouldn't want to see
Yeah.
that back then?
Right. But you know, hey, like,
What are you gonna
it
do?
is what it is. But I think we can stop there for our break because that's the first half of Brock Lesnar's career
Yeah, because like I
to
was
be
just
in.
about to say, that was the departure sequentially the departure. Um, I remember Austin Stone Cold Stunner both of them, but yeah, Lesnar was headed to all of places to do, I guess, what he always wanted to do, NFL. He wanted to become a football player.
Football,
He
Minnesota Vikings.
minus Minnesota Vikings. Who else but his home Minnesota? He
Yeah, of course.
wanted to become NFL. So that's he leaves in 2004 to become a football player for the NFL. So yeah, we'll take a break there, guys, and then we'll talk about Lesnar going into Japan for a little bit. You got a lot of people forget
Yep.
that he did go to Japan, one of the few people to be the IWGP Heavyweight Champion and WWE Champion still to this day.
Yep.
And then we'll talk about him coming back the second time, and then
Yeah.
if you say the third time, essentially the comeback again, and well, I wouldn't say that the mini comeback in 2015. We'll finish it out, and then we'll talk what I like to call the dark days under the reign of the Mad King Lesnar. From then on,
Yeah.
Lesnar's
Yeah.
reign.
We can definitely. It's a lot of ground to cover even in that, guys, and
The
it's a lot of
2018 the
rants.
reign, yes, the Mad King. So we'll, yeah, it's 112 now, or sorry, it's midnight 3 now. So we'll see you guys in 10 minutes, and we'll be right back to finish out Lesnar.
All right.